Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bivcorp. Today, I'm going to have a quick interview with my two guns in the office. So both got big guns. Blair's particularly got big guns, but and my son Christian. So, boys, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time this morning. What I thought it would be interesting for people to know, as I've had a few people searching for employment that have rung me and said, "How do we get into those roles that the boys are doing?" So I thought I might randomly throw questions at you two, and some of them you may or may not want to answer, but I expect you to answer all the questions. All right, so and I'll put the acid on you. Some of them will be uncomfortable because it relates to the current work we're doing and things like that. So if anything is offensive, we'll just snip it out. All right? That's what John's the master of, aren't you, John? Yes. But anyway, thanks, guys. So, Christian, you've been with me now over 3 years?
Yes.
And Blair about 15, 16 months? Yeah, okay.
All right. I've been with you for 29 years.
29 years, yes, okay. So in that, and what a blessing it must be for you.
Yes.
Blair, I've known you about 8 or 9 years, 10 years?
10 years.
Yeah. And what a blessing it must be for you too, son.
Been amazing.
Yes. Thanks very much, Blair. You're talking about me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I suppose, Christian, first of all, you've come in basically through the start of COVID. We decided to take on we went on a buying spree basically. We went on a purchase process business. We went into land acquisition, building acquisition mode. That you've got your degree and your diploma.
Yep.
So you've done all that. So your transition went from really, I suppose, uni straight into the fire.
Yes.
Yeah, with some jobs in between. So just quickly tell us the jobs you've had, the part-time jobs that you've done beforehand.
So I've done sales at Retrovision, Better Electrical. I've managed a barbecue store in Richmond, Heat and Grill.
That was good fun.
Great fun, loved it there. Yeah. Really good operators, Aidan and Lockie. Lockie you'd hear on 3AW at the moment, does talkback and a few barbecue hosts and shows. Aidan's still a legend. I pop in for a beer every now and again with him.
Who's the guy that taught you to barbecue? What was his name?
Bob Hart. Yeah, Bob Hart. So Bob Hart, who used to do the 3AW shows, would come in. He taught us to barbecue on the Webbers. We'd go to his place and have the pit smokers and the barrels and the drums and charcoal and everything else. And we'd spend an arbo there, learn to barbecue, and then go take those techniques back to Richmond.
That's why you're the Tomahawk barbecue master.
That is. Love it, Tomahawk. Spot on. Yep. So yeah, look, that was my first kind of retail jobs, and then I had a few of my own businesses. So I had Crypto Hub, which was a crypto trading business based around signals, calls, market analysis, and a few other bits and pieces. I had C&B Apparel, which John helped me with as well. So that was the clothing company I ran for probably 4 or 5 years. We did markets, pop-up shops. I did run events as well and sold merchandise for those too. Sponsored a few different artists and gave that a pretty good crack too. And then by the time I finished my property and valuation degree, moved my way into Bivcorp with you.
Blair, as far as you go, the last 16 months, that project management type role, and I'll make a couple of statements. I've seen you transition swiftly and clinically, like that discussion that we had this morning about one of our foremen on site. You know, the way that you handled him and gave him some accolades, that I think is really impressive. And you were also measured. And I think, and the way that you told me that story, having good measure when you're talking to someone is extremely important. And you two both have that. I'm very fortunate to have you in that regard. When we talk about our legacy project, which is going to be our initial benchmark until the next one, I suppose, how have you gone, Blair, particularly dealing on site when we've had argy-bargy with builders and tradies and all the normal stuff that goes on?
I come from a background where there was a lot of conflict. Yeah. So that taught me how to, that ultimately losing your cool is counterproductive. And that also on a personal level, losing your cool is a sign of weakness. And if you want people on site to respect you, you need to, be an even keel type of person. And over time, there's definitely been times earlier on when my blood pressure was rising a bit and I just had to bite my tongue and take a step back. But I'm finding now that it's easier for me to find the words that are needed in certain situations to essentially mediate between parties on site.
Sometimes builders and trades.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also a big part of it is just being empathetic and kind of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding what's going on with them and what's going on with their role and the pressures that are on them.
And that can also be affected by what's happening at home,
Yeah.
a whole range of different things. I have a saying that, when work is shit and home is good, everything's still good,
Yeah.
right? But when home is shit, then everything's bloody difficult, and so therefore, as property developers, and now that we're project managing our own jobs, which is really the way to go for us, we've also become psychologists in between. You agree with that? Yeah, okay. So we have to manage people's expectations, their realities, and make sure that we hit certain timelines and those sort of things. And both of you have come in now when we're in the market that I call COVID overhang or lag. We're picking up all the shit that we've collected over the 3 years with trade prices going up, tradesmen hourly rates going up, some of them being a bit belligerent with us, some of them going on site and wanting pay increases, like all those sorts of things that go on. And I think so far we've managed it okay. I think one failure that we've got now, which is our Sunbury job, and I say it's not a failure because we didn't do a good job with it. I think that job's a beautiful development. I think the Sunbury job, we just missed the mark. We got caught in that trade increase and there was nothing we could do to pull back. And I know that we've spent hundreds of hours on that particular job, hundreds of hours. And I know you two have, and I've seen Christian's light off at 4 o'clock in the morning because he's stressing. When we get to the stage where we pull a job off the market, that's a big deal. It's a big deal for the people that buy off us, and it's a big deal for us, and it's a big deal for all the commitments and all the money that we're holding on that job that's currently doing nothing. So, as you guys are trying to reinvent that particular job now, we have become, the difficulty with that job has shown me that you two are very, very good problem solvers. Your interaction is excellent. If anyone is the most immature one in the office, it's the guy that's speaking right now, right? But and I know my interaction sometimes with you guys frustrates you a little bit, but we are making good moves forward, and the way that we've gone about re-looking at Sunbury, and we're having personal interactions with some of the buyers and the agent and those sorts of things. What will make us great is how we handle bad outcomes, because anyone can be good, right? And that's why a lot of property developers, there was another one yesterday, you said it's gone bright.
I interviewed in the last 2 weeks.
There's a lot of that going on. So, and they're getting harder to manage. So when you've got a job that's 20 or 30% way over, no matter how good you are, you can't claw that back. So you got to get them right at the start. And we got caught in that lag. And that's what I think a lot of builders and developers now have happened, that have got caught in that. And especially if the developer is far removed from the work. And that's why this is currently working, because you guys are on the spot every day. The trades see you, the builder sees you, you have interaction on worksite, on timelines, changes in design. We're quicker to respond with the architect that way. There's no lag where the builder might have to go back home and ring the builder, bring the architect. We do it right on site. Those things that you guys are doing are good. So from a job satisfaction point of view, how are you two feeling? Out of 10, be honest.
An overall job satisfaction or a job by job satisfaction?
An overall.
I'd like to be further ahead than where we are, but it's been the process at the moment.
It's just job satisfaction. So what's your job satisfaction level out of 10?
7, 6.5, 7. I don't have my job satisfaction is good on where I've gotten the jobs to. I've planned and permitted 12 or 14 jobs in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. So that is successful. That is good.
Absolutely.
On job completion, different story. So that number will rise December, January of this year when Legacy is finished. And then that will also lead into a project management job that I've started building in Rosanna.
Yeah.
Should have framing and upper roof completed by the end of this year as well. So those kind of milestones will be my job satisfaction increase.
Yep.
And then up until the next one starts. And then I get better at the process and more fluid.
Yeah, good. Okay. And Blair, so for you, it's hard to quite because you're out of the workforce for a while, but your job satisfaction level, just on an overall basis, and let's not pinpoint it to any particular job, but that's a good way of doing it. But overall, out of 10, how much do you like your job?
I love my job. It's a 10 out of 10, but in terms of like satisfaction with where we're at the moment is probably similar to Christian, like a 7, because I've come into this industry probably at the hardest time. So it's just the whole, even though my knowledge it has increased rapidly because of the constant tests that we're put under. It's.
And in saying that, I love my job too. So the job satisfaction part and then my job are different levels. So
I want you to think about this. And we had a lot of dialogue between the three of us, but I thought it'd be good to share this in a video. I need you to think about job satisfaction level then in segments. So we can rate it per job. We can rate it how the office environment is, and we're pretty fortunate. Like we work with some great people. Like it's about a 9.8 out of 10. Right. So in that case though, there are areas in our business that we can get job satisfaction from that we need and are working on, but we need to work on more. And one of them is networking. We need to network more as a business. We're a good business. We're solid. We're communicative. We're kind. I know it sounds a bit corny, but we're kind. And we sponsor the RSPCA and a few other organisations, and that's all really good too, which we all sort of go to and involved in. That's good. But you can segment, and I did this last night briefly. You can segment your satisfaction into different levels. And that's where you'll get the wave, because one of them might be 2. When we started Legacy with all the difficulties that we had, it was like 1.8 out of 10. Remember that? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, in the last month, the thing shoots up in the 9s, right? Because we finally got a handle on quite a few things, but we learned a lot about people, humanity, articulation, understanding, a whole range of things, and it was interesting because when Sam, our foreman on site, I was the only one not aware that he was having a baby. Now, as you know, I'm normally pretty good at that stuff. He had the baby and someone told me he had a kid. I didn't even realise. I felt really bad about that. So that's when I took him to lunch, So in that score, it made me realise that I'd probably dropped off in my communication and interaction with him. So I lifted my game. But you can break up your satisfaction quotient in certain areas. So networking is one of them. The other one is consultant feedback and understanding. And I know that you guys are pretty good at that, I have to say. And Christian, your interaction with Ed and, even Marnie before and all those sorts of things, they all matter, So we want to make sure that when we talk to people on the phone, that they hear us smile. That they hear us smile on the phone, right? And that they want to take our call and we want to respond reasonably quickly. So I think you guys have done really good work with that, and we can always do better, but I think we've done good work with that. Let's talk about briefly the purchasing of sites. Okay? Just explain to the people that are listening that when we find something, what's the process that you both go through? You know, like looking at planning and a whole range of stuff. So just give us a rough 5-minute spiel on, you two go out, you see your site, like those shops that we're looking at.
Yep.
You see your site and you go, oh, that's got some potential. Tell me what happens.
We have a stroll around the area. We look at what's nearby. We look at what's similar. We look at height levels. I look at the amount of traffic flowing through a certain area, the distance to the shops, or the distance to the school, the distance to the parks. And once I'm satisfied with what I know is around the area or the site itself, and that also takes into topography, so the slope or services or what's there currently. Get back to the office, we do a planning report that'll give me zoning, any other overlays, development overlay, heritage overlay, development overlay, whatever it might be.
Trees, all that stuff.
Yeah. So it gives me a bit of an idea of, what I can or can't do on the site. If I'm ever stuck there with anything, or there's something I can't quite figure out, or could be interpreted in a few different ways, which is a lot of council language, I generally call my planner from Beveridge Williams, Jeff, and then he can have a look into that a little bit more detailed and give me some advice. From there, we start running numbers on different scenarios and different ideas. So I don't know if it's a townhouse site, we can look at the option of, do you do 3 big homes or do you do 6 duplexes side by side, or can you do apartments on this one, or do you do 1 big home, or you want to start running those alternatives. In that process, I like to get Edgar from Point involved. He can say, hey, Christian, you'll get 3 on here comfortably, or, this one we could look at internal sizes of, say, this amount. Then that gives us the ability here, mainly Blair does lots of the feasibilities, start to punch everything in, look at your holding cost, look at your purchase cost, look at your sales price, do an estimated cost of construction.
It's been good.
It's always great. Great. Gets me back a schematic in a day, gives me an idea.
Very good at problem solving though.
It's
very good.
Yeah.
Like, he's
we don't really have problems.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
In other words, everything's
brilliant. Yeah.
So look, and that's a big that makes up that kind of progression, and we do that until we find a way that works, or it doesn't work. It doesn't work. We've tried 10 different ways and move on to the next.
All right. So when we, and we'll get onto the feasos in a minute, Blair, because you look after predominantly those. When, in addition to my question, there's an aspect that people really need to understand. So when you're buying in an area, say you pass a group of shops, you have a look, and you're buying in an area, the things that additionally that you should look for is government infrastructure spending, state and federal, right? Road transport and access, which you sort of mentioned before anyway. What's happening with the development of schools, kindergartens, preschools, high schools and all that in certain areas. What's happening with that?
Some of that's more area dependent, depending on purchase.
Yeah.
I.e., if you're down in Gippsland, maybe looking at infrastructure and potential future funding would be more of a relevant thing to look at, opposed to, say, the heart of Monash. The money's there, the infrastructure's there, they're going to keep working.
Yeah, fair enough. Yep, good point. Yep.
But yes,
you're down in Gippsland a lot.
Yeah. But yes, very relative, 100%.
Okay. So then the other thing too that struck me, I went out the other day to Calcalo, on the other side of town, in Mickleham. Wow, it took me ages. And I was so naive, but the suburban spread was, and I've been in property development 32 years.
It's just a single road, isn't it?
Yeah. I couldn't see the end of it. And it just kept going. And you're talking about 30, 40,000 houses that are all built. Now, one of the interesting things, though, do you know what the things that happened in that area that I found out on the weekend was some of the Sikh mosques were actually there before the subdivisions started. So what does that tell you?
They bought out those
the religious groups have got out there and then bought their clan out.
Yes.
Bit by bit. So, and I know that has happened down at Keysborough.
Well, you're supposed to say, besides Keysborough and a couple of other spots, there's a bit of a...
Yeah, and that's happening. And that's maybe another thing to follow when you see that there are certain religious groups that are moving into areas. Because by rights, going out there and you have a look at all the shopping centres, the Indians have made that area. Like it is huge, it's bustling, the shopping centres were full, the food smelled great. Like it was just one of those things. And and they cluster buy. You know, like a lot of Chinese, a lot of Italian hits.
It's about community.
Yeah, it is. So, you know, and so when we look at all our purchase options, when we're land banking and things like that, they're all the things.
ABS stats, population growth, the type of people buying, who's moving from what suburb to the other suburb, all of the other, you know, census stats, I suppose, that we look at.
Yeah. So, you know, so Blair, so in our fee zones, how many, when we're doing a fee zone, and I know the answer to this question, but how many times do we do a fee zone on one particular job? We're starting to run into the hundreds, are we?
Yeah, it's a lot. We do a lot. Yeah, you know, because
the reasons are
because we're trying to explore every option that we've got, and we use a particular piece of software which allows us to be quite analytical about the process.
Okay, and what software is that?
It's called Development Feasibility by Estate Master. Right. So yeah, I mean, we'll look at the differences between the number of townhouses or houses we put on a site, the sizes of the townhouses or houses that we put on a site, the finishes, and all that stuff will obviously contribute to a square meterage rate that we use for construction. And then we'll look at comparisons in the market in terms of sales. We'll speak to local agents, and we'll go out there and kind of put boots on the ground and really have a look at what's going on in the area.
Yeah, boots on the ground is important.
Yeah.
There's an old Italian saying that the best investment a farmer makes is his footsteps, right? And in our game, you guys have sort of got onto that pretty quick. But, you know, you might have to drive 3 or 4 hours, see something, and it's no good. You've got to drive 3 or 4 hours back. Doesn't matter. And just sorry to cut in, Blair, but just briefly, you may or may not know this story, but when I was at Siege Developments and we bought our first subdivision, it took me 30 months to find it. And I used to leave my business, my real estate business, on a Friday and go down in my ute. And for 30 months, not every week, but for a lot of weeks a year, I don't know if you remember this, Christian, I'd go out and my wife would pack me soup, sandwiches. I had a TV in the car. I had a TV in the ute, right, because I was out on the road so much looking around. And I had some really updated navigation stuff in the car. And I'd go out searching for land that actually wasn't on the market. And that's when I found the land in North Rise that we ended up naming Jacobs Park. And I actually...
Is that Wonthaggi?
Yeah, Wonthaggi. And I stumbled on that just by pure luck, just by being out there. And then interestingly enough, that's how we had an association, which is still going 30 years later, with Beveridge Williams, because I just went into the local engineering shop in Wonthaggi and Peter Toole was there at the counter because they'd just opened. Now look how huge they are. They've got thousands of workers. But so that, I went in and I said, look, I don't know anything about land development, but I need someone who can do the engineering for me and teach me. And we just got a kinship from that, and it just sort of took off. You know, so that's why going out and, there's times where the best thing you two can do is just be out, even if you feel like you're not being productive. Looking around, talking to people, that sort of stuff.
Back to the FISO thing as well, you know, it gives us a best and worst case scenario as well on jobs. So if, we know something isn't working out, where we can end up to or where we can change it to, and the flexibility within that as well.
Well, so when you're doing the FISOs, and we know that there are many variables now, more than there ever been before. Every item on that feasibility list could be a variable. That never was the case prior to COVID.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'm not blaming COVID for that, but I think a lot of the ways that COVID was handled by the government, at federal and state, could have been done a bit better, and might have made our lives a little bit easier. And it made people more conscious that they could either A, milk the system, or B, have a lot of things in the system they couldn't control and either leave and change jobs and do whatever, right? Now, so, and what I'm getting at is this. Could you name me on a feasibility 3 or 4 items that really are subject to change all the time, like the real variables, just for the people listening. If you said, what was a couple of things on a FISO that change a lot that you've really got to keep your eye on?
Well, the obvious, the construction cost. That's just plain and simple. It's just, even if we've thought we've known the cost and we've done it comparatively off another job, which is very, very similar, it never seems to work out the same. So that's probably the biggest.
Are you talking about elements within that, or are you...
FISO, yeah, just on
the construction or just as a whole?
As a whole, there's any item on that feasibility. And so,
well, I don't know if you'd call it variability, but you're guaranteed that if you're working with councils and things like substations and electrical authorities, the price will keep going up.
But those holding costs and delays on those hurt more now than they did a year or two ago.
Yeah.
You're holding it 7, 8, 9%, not at 1, 2 or 3%. So the difference there, it's easier to manage a 1 or 2% hold opposed to a 9 or 10% hold when everything else is increasing at the same time.
There used to be an old philosophy that the profit's in the purchase, right? I have to say, I don't know whether that's the case anymore. I think the profit is in us managing what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can overpay for a bit of dirt, but if you can get a handle on all the other stuff, and like considering the amount of jobs that we're doing, and we're doing a few, that one at Sunbury, we just had no control and it just went up exponentially. And there's a whole range of factors with that. Starting with...
For me, like after 15, 16 months of doing FISOs, the biggest thing for me that I think needs to be managed is the time component. Because that time component will affect, depending on the type of contract you got with your builder, it's going to affect what you pay them and how that deviates from the original number that you had.
So provisional sums.
Provisional sums, and it's going to affect your interest, obviously, and people need to remember that you've got interest on the dirt and you've got interest on the construction loan. So there's 3 things there that are heavily impacted by time. And then there's obviously outside of that, there's other things that smaller items that people don't really think about, like in terms of marketing and stuff that are actually affected by time as well.
Okay, so then just say with, and I'll tie this video up shortly, but I think the provisional sum item thing is something that as developers we've got to get a real handle on, and as the market levels out a little bit, we're going to have to be a lot harder with those. And you might, if you get a provisional, and you get a contract with provisional items on it, and it's got a dozen provisional items, well, we've got to look at the builder.
Yeah,
because that's in those cases you can't run jobs like that.
Yeah, it's just too much uncertainty.
Yes, that's right. And also too is the most important thing that you've said today, Blair, is that timeline. Can I tell you, all jobs that I know are with the big 4 or private institutions or second-tier lenders, everybody's saying the same thing. They're all late. Now, they could be late for many reasons. Could be the builder's cash flow is not good, so the developer could be paying the builder.
Even time getting to site now. Just getting the permit, getting things endorsed, getting things re-stamped, getting everything looked at, getting the authority, then getting the approval, then getting the tick off from the building surveyor, then getting back to site. Everything is a step now, and there's a step for a step. It's not just, hey, I'm doing this, I'm starting. It's, hey, you've got to do this before you can start. There's always just something else, and it's always relying on somebody else.
That's why I think the system that we've got at the moment, which is always up for review and enhancement, is evolving, but it's working because we're on the spot and we're personal. So,
we have the benefit of being able to make a decision between us 3. So that does cut down a lot of time that other people probably extend on a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Well, we might leave that for today. I think that was really good. Thanks for the interaction, guys. And for those of you that are listening, that are budding developers, hopefully you got something out of that. These guys are always available for a chat at any time. And if you've got any dirt that if you want to sell or you want to do something with, you're more than welcome to give these guys a buzz. Thanks very much for listening to us.